This week in comic books, we get Superman Lost #3, and we get a perfect example of a base rate fallacy. It's something we all fall victim to. Even Superman will break that down for you. And in the lands of Marvel, we get Silk, and I don't know why we did, because all they did was tell a Spider-Verse story over and over again. They just put it in her imagination. Yeah. And in Independence, we get something epic, and I hope, and I'm praying, that this is not somebody's internal monologue. I'll tell you why. But first, can I get 15 seconds to try to entice you to buy some coffee and maybe save a little bit of money when you do? That would be great. Hey, you wonderful weirdos. Welcome back. It's another week, which means more comic books, and I'm super happy that you came by. So let's break down this week's comic books real quick. We're going to kick it off with DC, with something I actually didn't pick up on Wednesday, but I picked it up on Free Comic Book Day and went ahead and read it once I found out what the title was, because it wasn't on the front. This super shiny monstrosity to try to get into the picture, right, is Knights of Terror. So normally, I do not like stories where it deals with like a dreamland or somebody stuck in their subconscious or their own head. I don't find these particular stories interesting unless they're a horror, right? There's spooky, scary stuff going on, and this is what this does. So we're launching off in the dawn of DC, its new kind of course correction that it's taking for its storytelling and everything else it's doing. We're going with a great horror story here, where we're kind of playing with the mind a little bit, mostly Damian Wayne, and yeah, I kind of like where this is going. Super creepy, super spooky. If you didn't pick one of these up, I highly suggest you do, especially if you're kind of wondering how this whole DC kind of changed its storytelling and the way it's presenting stories to people. You know, if you're still one of those holdouts that doesn't like the way DC tells stories, and this was free or if it's super cheap at your comic book shop right now, I would probably pick this up. Yeah. So basically, even with Damian Wayne knowing that all this is a dream that's going on in his head. So basically, same concept as in most of these type of stories. Everything he knows and loves is out to get him in this kind of dream state that he's in. But it being, of course, him, he knows that he's dreaming, but then they kind of reset it a few times. Again, that's normally something I don't like. But I don't know why. It seems to be hitting on this one for me, right? And I'm not like a super duper DC fan or even a Marvel fan for that matter, right? I like the story and the characters that are involved regardless of the industry, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, this whole direction DC's taking now, I'm really digging this. Case in point, and it's been a while since we've been able to do something like this, but we got Superman Lost. This is #3. If you don't know, quick synopsis. Superman is lost in the further reaches of space and cannot find his way back home. He's gotten himself into a little bit of I don't know how to describe, little scuffles here and there, right? Like there were some people that were trying to sell him or thought that he had money. He went to a planet where he wasn't welcomed, but they never really harped on these stories, and I think these are going to be storylines later. I think we're getting sneak peeks of some possible storylines later. But the major thing in this, and why I said in the beginning of the intro there, is that this is kind of dealing with something that everybody can fall for, actually. It's a very common thing to do, and it's a fallacy, and it's been a while since we've talked about fallacies on here. So this is called a base rate fallacy. So in here, he's in space, and he sees these space dolphins. Don't get hung up on space dolphins, right? It's a comic book. Weird stuff is going to happen. We have to accept that at some degree. But he remembers in his head, like, oh, Lobo, right, the intergalactic mercenary bounty hunter guy, is like, hey, I know about dolphins, talks about dolphins, blah, 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 and we're in a region of space near Earth. When he told him this, and he's like, hey, these cats can get me home, right? And he's doing this great thing where he's like, the computer that he's with him to assist him to get home doesn't really understand where Earth is because it has no point of reference or data about it. And So he's like trying to figure out what the computer does know and what he knows and how to get from point A to point B and about how long it will take. Like, he does everything in the most logical way you can to determine distance, time, and how to get someplace. And a lot of it's on point. Like, it's legit on point stuff. But then he's like, I don't have enough energy. I'm not going to have enough time. Like, there's always, right, the thing that will fail to get him there. But he's Superman. He's going to do it anyway, right? Then he runs into these dolphins. And he goes, I remember this story. Maybe I can hang on to one of them and we'll shoot across. But they can't communicate. But they're empathic or something. Again, don't get hung up on the dolphin thing. You got to add some woo-woo. Got to have some comic book woo-woo to make it interesting or weird or engaged. So he holds on, and of course they're going to take him someplace, but it turns out it's a gas planet where several of the other dolphins are kind of trapped, and he's trying to help figure it out. Again, I think this is going to be another little Easter egg that we're going to get in future comic book storytelling, talking about this particular planet too, because it's really weird the way it has its defenses and everything set up, and I hope they don't throw that concept away. I hope that becomes a thing. Frees them, tries to get back on board with the dolphins. It's not happening. It fails. And at some point, the computer's like, the assumption that these were the dolphins that Lobo knew about, right, is like, there's no connection there. You have no way of knowing that, right? These things could be all over the universe for all we know. They could be in pods, whatever the case may be. You never saw it. You just took somebody's story and you tried to make it a reference point for what you've already logically kind of figured out to find a shortcut. We do this. You can't help but do this. Here's some good examples of you doing this. Back in the day, if you're my age, your parents probably told you at one time turning on the interior light of the car while it's driving is illegal. And you probably thought that shit was illegal. And it's not. It's not. Right? Or my favorite one, chewing gum doesn't digest in your stomach when you swallow it. Right? We should already know at this point that that's not real either. So you get this little baseline of knowledge, but you never really took the time to figure it out or whatever. I'm pretty bad about this too. I have this kind of trusting thing where, like, somebody tells me something, and if it passes the sniff test, like, I'll kind of believe it, and then come to find out they were just kind of just doing what we're talking about right now, and then I blabbered it off to somebody like it was knowledge to somebody that actually had knowledge. Oh, it sucks. It sucks having that done. But being able to recognize and coming back from it is a beautiful thing. And I hope we see that here in Superman as he moves forward trying to get home. Right? He's just trying to go home. He just wants to go home. So, yeah, super thumbs up on that. Definitely. Oh, by the way, if you've ever fallen for one of these little base rate type of things, let me know down in the comments down below. I don't hear all of them. I know some of the more popular ones, but if you've heard this kind of thing before or experienced this, definitely let me know, because that would be super cool. Alright, next. Green Lantern #1. So we relaunched Green Lantern. Now, Green Lantern's hard for me to get on board with a lot. I don't like a lot of overcomplicated woo-woo. I don't like 20 years of back history trying to figure out what this story's about. I don't really like that kind of stuff. So this was an easy jump on for me, because basically it's just Hal Jordan coming back to Earth. His time in the Green Lantern Corps is done. He's home. He's like all about the Top Gun type stuff. He wants to fly jets, have witty combat, be brash, not be patient, not thinking, just reacting. And kind of his whole... So if you think about it, it's kind of like a reintroduction into Hal Jordan, if you haven't read about him in a while. But also at the end of this, if you were wondering what happened to other Lantern Corps members, you get that too, and you get a big reveal at the end, right? I'm just going to say space zombies. Space zombies. Like, that's... I don't know why, but I like saying that. Alright, next. Spirit World. So, most people, shockingly, thought that I wouldn't like this. People were like, dude, that's not going to be your kind of read. That's not written for you, which is just a horrible argument to say at any time. If it's written word, it's for everybody, and everybody should enjoy it. If they like it or not, that's a different story. So, as I'm not a big fan of this particular character, and I'm, oh man, this is going to sound bad, but I'm going to mess up this name. I know the last name is pronounced Jean, so we'll just go that way. And it's Asian Pacific Islander month, so what a great time to introduce this Asian Pacific character, right? What's great about this picks up right in the dawn of DC, where they were doing those quick short stories, introducing new characters. Now we're moving forward with their individual ones, much like we did with City Boy.
City Boy! City Boy!
The great thing about this is Batgirl, the Asian one, I believe her name's Cassidy, is in the spirit world. She's from the spirit world, back here, trapped here on Earth, wants to get back to the spirit world. Not a fan of the living. Not a fan of the living. Kind of has a little mean girl attitude to her, but she's not a girl. I should point that out. I believe she's fluid, I think is the correct term there. And they kind of hinted to that when a little girl didn't know to call her brother or sister as a compliment for saving her. So she's in our particular world. So who better to deal with magic woo-woo stuff in the DC universe than the man himself, Constantine. So yeah, Constantine makes an appearance in here, and we've seen this kind of stuff happen before. A lot of times I don't like it, but again, DC's doing something different. Like they're kind of following a script and kind of a tropey thing by bringing in a character to help support a new character in their journey to kind of draw eyes to it, right? But they're just telling a better story now. And this is really engaging because we kind of get this Asian-inspired world of the dead, and then somebody trying to get back there. And then we have these really heartbreaking moments where apparently our spirit world girl decides to chase after some energy to go into a gate. I know it's a lot of woo-woo. Just work with me on this. And runs into her mother, whom they've been separated from for about 15 years. And it was kind of heartbreaking because by assumption, from what I've read so far, is that this girl had died at some point or passed away or left to go to the spirit world, I guess is the best way to put it, since they're not really directly telling us. But that was kind of heartbreaking, right? Can you imagine? Like, oh, and she's young, so that means for her to have passed on, right? You get where I'm going with this, right? Breaks the heart. All right. Next, we got Extreme Venom, because we're moving into Marvel. And this is pretty much where our comic book storytelling shift of new and interesting stuff happens, pretty much stops. I'm sorry to say that. I know my diehard Marvel fans, I can already feel you hitting the dislike button, but it's okay. So Extreme Venom. So this is a couple of stories in here. We're doing something like we do with the Spider-Verse, right? And we're kind of hippity-hopping through 3 stories here that are kind of Venom in some way, shape, or form. We got the old story where we take when Spider-Man first realized he'd get rid of the Venom, right, the symbiote, with the ringing of the bells, and it goes down and it gets Eddie Brock. And we tried to make it this whole story of repentance, that the symbiote, felt repentance and wanted to go infect Eddie Brock to help him in his repentance. It's weird. It doesn't make much sense. Like, what is... Like, this whole time we just thought that the parasite was a parasite, right? And parasites aren't exactly... I don't want to say mean or nice. They're really neither one of those, right? It's just something that feeds to stay alive. So it was kind of... I don't know. I thought that missed the mark a little bit. Took away from the character. Then we kind of focused on Dylan being a young boy throwing temper tantrums. And then, of course, the symbiote he has just makes it stronger. I don't know. And then the last one was just a mess. I'm just going to be honest out there. Honestly, I wouldn't even pick this up, right? But as we all know, we all should know by now why, right? Life gets what the wife wants. And we read comic books. So, next, again, I don't know. Just because, look, if somebody from Marvel's watching this, editors, I don't know why you would be. But by the sheer chance that you are, editors, you can't keep telling the same story and just injecting another character and slapping a feel-good messaging to it, right? Like, it's Asian Pacific American Month, which they should have time to celebrate their heritage here in America. I am totally on board with that. And you need characters that look like you. I'm on board with that too. I don't think that should be the only reason why you should be drawn to a character, right? The things they do. But in this case, we're going to take Silk and we're basically going to put her in the Spider Cowboy storyline and Spider-Man Noir storyline, right? And we're going to push forward with that. And all this is happening while she's trapped in her own subconscious because a villain, an irrelevant villain that I don't know if anybody knows this particular villain, they didn't know their name, has her unconscious on medical equipment, making her live this torturous nightmare, right? So that's their idea of changing it. Basically tell a Spider-Verse story and put Silk in it and make the villain play it over and over again in their head. That's why I generally don't like subconscious stories, because the reasoning to have the subconscious story doesn't make any sense to me in most cases. Like, how is that? What do you think you're doing? Like, okay, so better example, right? I'm sure most of you out there have had some sort of nightmare while you were asleep before, right? Just horrible, horrendous, the worst one you ever had. How long did the nightmare affect you? Right? You can say like a day, a week, it's something on my mind. I still think about it every now and then. That's not what I'm asking. How long did it affect you? What was the psychological torture that the nightmare puts you through? It doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe I'm overthinking it. They are comic books at the end of the day, but things like I had a bad dream. I ate some bad oysters. That's stuff for life. No, that's not how that works. Yeah, I don't know. All right, so going into Independence. All right, so something epic. Another little rant that I'm about to do for you right now. Something epic. This is super sad, and it is something that I think most Gen Xers and modern millennials can probably relate to. Single family home, right? Mom's working, kid pretty much spends a lot of time alone. Maybe they don't fit in school very well. Maybe school's very boring, and you have a creative imagination, right? This takes that whole scenario, plops it in here, and then intensifies it, comic books extreme things, and makes all of his imaginations, he's convinced that they're, or maybe they are, real. So like all the things he can imagine, the things you imagine, like this kid sees it and can interact and see all these things. And they talk to him, he talks back to them. In some cases, he talks back to them. And takes the whole creativity thing and gives it a persona, if you will, right? It's like a living, functional thing. And then as the narrative goes through, it starts getting real dark about how, because energy and mass and these things kind of exist in the real world, and the creation of our imaginations are based off of these things are real. Like, it kind of goes down this kind of pseudoscience type of route where they're trying to convince you that everything he's seeing is real. And I'm sorry, I didn't hate this book. I should say that first. I did not hate this book. I absolutely enjoy this because it was a great snapshot of what schizophrenia looks like for people, right? If you've read case files or read the symptoms or even met somebody that was schizophrenic that sees hallucinations and interacts with them, like, it's very hard to convince them that this stuff is not happening. And for it to happen to a young child, that's got to be even scarier with the imagination that children have, right? Like, that's, like, I didn't know, like, I felt bad. Like, I actually put this down. I actually felt sad for a fictional character. Kudos, writer. Kudos. Next, Scar. I don't know why I'm picking this up. I honestly don't. So, this is the whole time where Scar is about to set up his little secret army with the hyenas, right? You may remember the movie. But this is like the precursor to all that. And I'm reading it, and I'm like, yeah, he's going to meet the hyenas, and then they're going to overthrow, and they're going to kill the king, and yada, yada, yada. And nobody liked him. Nobody ever liked him. This tells us why. We kind of got that from the movie, right? So I don't know. No, I'm just not going to be picking this up anymore because I found myself not caring. Like, I don't care about the politics of the whole thing. It's just kind of weird. Although while I was reading it, I did, like, the voice in my head as I'm reading this, right, is the one from the cartoon, so movie. And that wasn't even something I went and saw on my own. Like, my daughter was born at that time. She was young, so we took her to go see it. I don't care about lions. All right, next. Probably the saddest moment of comic book reading ever here on the Junkyard Joe comic book review. The last issue of Junkyard Joe. I have sung the praises of this song, and we finally got more of the comic books part of this. We kind of started looking away from the PTSD stuff. We focused in on that. I was even on somebody else's show, and I talked about it. And it couldn't have been a perfect timing because, you got to add the comic book stuff to it, right? And this one we get our villain who made Junkyard Joe here, and he has a little bit of a god complex. He really kind of did. But Junkyard Joe took care of business, and they didn't overcomplicate it, and they didn't over-woo-woo it, because they spent so much time on the heart of this story, and I thought that was very important. But at the end, we get a little hint that Granger is still out there, and he can kind of rip through time at this point. If you don't remember, Granger was the first appearance of Junkyard Joe in that whole comic book series, and then this kind of spun off from it, and it looks like we might be swinging right back into it, into a new disaster there, which I hope we do, because that was just a great storyline to read, and it was fun. It was just fun, and silly, and it was dangerous, and it was action-packed. It was smart. All right. So, real quick review of some things that I read this new comic book day. I promised a review on them. So, these were some comic books that I picked up. One, Project New Wave. I like watching comic book artists do their comic books, especially their first take at a comic book or relatively new to it. So, the obvious criticism, and I do not criticize independent artists, right? But if you want to read Project New Wave, I would recommend it because I think it's a good lesson in how to tell a story. Yes, it can be a little choppy at points, right? But who cares, right? You learn to get better at things as you go through things. I love the artwork in it. I love the premise of the stories in it. Young kids, secret military, has to go fight bad guys. They kind of do this thing where they jump from old world stuff, like pulling sword from stones, to aliens coming out of space. The thing's kind of all over the place, but it's done in such a linear line that you can actually follow through with it, and I thought that was great. Next, this was pretty good too. So yeah, again, I'll try to find the links for these down below and keep them down below. Again, we're dealing with young kids and just doing their best to fight through the world. But this one kind of deals with time and time travel, where somebody thought they were going to be traveling back in time, but instead skipped through dimensions to meet themselves at different points. So think of the multiverse, right? If you jumped across lines instead of going back in time. It's kind of what we're dealing with here, with a being that kind of knows and understands what's going on, right? But they don't outright tell you that. So this was good too. I really enjoyed it. I would recommend these as far as independent books go, and to help support people getting their comic books out there to you in any way they can, because it's not easy, I'm sure, and it's not easy to write a story. I've tried. I'm on my 15th take on just writing a 16-page mess. It's just a mess. I'm still working on it. Alright guys, so that's my comic book haul and review. Sorry if this one took a little longer than usual. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next week. If I don't make any shorts or do something funny on Instagram, but you should follow me there. So don't forget to like and subscribe, hit that notification bell, all the other stuff that YouTubers say, because I enjoy having you here. I'll talk to y'all later.